worked with major Muslim scholars from around the world on a range of contemporary issues. He last read the book titled 1452. I read the book here. And his ideal lazy Sunday afternoon would be to make breakfast when the wife is not at home. I don't know whether... Oh, Wi-Fi, sorry. Yeah, okay, alright. Okay, the Wi-Fi is not at home. So the Wi-Fi is not at home? Okay, the Wi-Fi travels, okay. The sister is a founding partner of London-based An-Nisa Society. She works with families, including developing the first accredited Islamic counseling course, produced a series of books on sexual health from an Islamic perspective, as well as resources on Muslim fatherhood. She also set up and runs a community madrasa. Her favorite Malaysian dish is, you want to take a guess? Rendang. And we asked her what superpower she would like. And her answer is to go back in time. We can question her more about it later. So I'm honored to introduce Mr. Fuad Nahdi and Sister Humera. Brothers and sisters, welcome to the stage.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah wa man wala. Sisters and brothers, those who are married and those who are even luckier who are not married, I greet you in the greetings of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Let me make it point clear that I have no opinion. I'm just going to say what my wife told me to tell you. First, we're very happy to be back again in this place, in Mukha, beautiful place. And the changes that have taken place made the place even more physically beauty, but the beauty of the companionship and people meeting, wanting to share experience is even much more beautiful. We look forward to spending a pleasant evening. Those of you saw me struggling to come on the stage. I'm a young man, but 28 years of marriage can do a lot of damage. If I was a footballer, I would have jumped up and nothing would have happened. But marriage for 28 years make you learn how to crawl in life. We'll talk more about how stage is reached like that. First, let me make one or two points clear. First of all, we ask protection from Allah, and we ask Him to bless the gathering, that we come and benefit from it, all of us. We're not coming to showcase or to brag about 20 years. We don't want to show you the rosy picture. We want to come and share you some practical experiences. The moral of the story is one of the big issues about marriages. There is normally a clog in or a block in communication. So if there's any one lesson we can learn is that successful marriages of any kind has to have in that door of continuously reflection and communicating and moving forward one step at a time. There is no perfect marriage, there is no perfect union, but there is a perfect intention of trying to make it better every day. I can give many advice to aspiring young husbands in private, because then that will not be questioned by the wife. I'm not supposed to be the main speaker. Ms. Humera Khan here, who has had the privilege of being my wife for 28 years, is going to share her thoughts about this kind of thing. I will tell you from now, because in the British Parliament, you have to state your interest. The interest here is that men are from Mars and women are from Venus or something like that. That women are very good in talking and discussing about their problems and women don't. that to a certain extent is true, but there could be because of their different ways of communicating. But there's no way. We'd like to hear also from other people. We come here not to teach, but to share. But we also come to learn. We want to listen to other people's experiences. So without much ado, I would like to ask Humera Khan, hopefully my number one wife and hopefully the only wife, inshallah, to share with us some ideas.
And I'm so happy to be back here in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, and to be, like Fuad said, in this beautiful environment of Mukha Cafe, which is, when we think of KL, is the first place I think we think about is this place. So, alhamdulillah. And I'd like to thank Sister Shahira, Carl, and Kaween Care, and Dr. Way for arranging this opportunity for us to gather and share experiences and ideas, inshallah. Fuad is the warm-up act, okay, so he's the one who sort of breaks the ice. So I realised this year in our anniversary in May that I've been married as long as I was single. So it made me think about myself and quite a bit, and who was I before I married, and who am I after I married, and all sorts of questions. And some of those thoughts I'll share a little bit later. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to start off, since we are in the best 10 days of the Hajj, I wanted to just make a link with this time of year, this spiritual time of year. Because there's a tendency, I think for us as Muslims, that we separate our ritual practices from the practical significance of them. And one of the things that the Hajj definition is it's a journey. Of course, the Hajj in itself is the ultimate journey, but the meaning behind it is to take a journey. And in this context of the pilgrimage is to make a sacred journey. But I think in relation to the title of this evening is marriage as a continuous journey, is that, should I pick it going? Is that we sometimes forget that the efforts we put into our spirituality is also required for us in our everyday practical life. And I just wanted to touch very briefly some of the things that we think about when we do the Hajj. And even if we're not doing the Hajj itself, it's something that we should be thinking about at this time, because the preparation for the Hajj requires us to resolve any unresolved issue that we have. These days there's a tendency to put a little notice up on Facebook, if I've hurt anybody, if I've troubled anybody, please forgive me, and I'm going for Hajj and I will seek dua and all that kind of stuff. That's a little bit of a cop-out. I mean, it's easy, it's just, whatever, but actually what we're required to do is actively go and look at these things in our lives which are not working, or maybe we've hurt somebody or somebody's hurt us. So we have to actively try and resolve those things. So that's part of the process. And then we're doing that because this is what we're asked to do from Allah. Everything is it's about finding the mechanisms to resolve a situation. For me, that's what Islam is primarily about. Finding solutions, moving on. And the Hajj itself has many different functions. It's psychological, right? We are tested beyond what we can imagine on the Hajj, right? So that testing and spirituality requires us, it's very individual, it requires us to dig deep in things that we may go on this journey where people are jostling us, and we get angry and we feel frustrated or whatever. We feel even selfish about our own spiritual journey, that we don't care about other people. So it requires a very inward challenge for us. And it's also a sort of moral and ethical journey for us, because we try with our intentions as we go along to look at all of the Muslims, all of humanity as equal, and we don't take our egos with us. And it's about control, it's about self-control. It's about, even though we may wish to lose our tempers, or we may feel frustrated about things, that we step back from that. And of course, other than our personal journey, it's also very social, because it's not something you do alone, it's something you do together. You go and you meet people that you've never met before, and you find ways to communicate. So when the Quran says that our differences in our languages is a sign from Allah, we have that perfect example at the Hajj, where we go and we challenge ourselves to find all these different people to say, how can we communicate with them? How do we bring our hearts together? How do we understand each other? So therefore the Hajj itself requires all these different elements, which we take them as a process, as a package. These are things that we should take back to our everyday life as a lesson, to say, how can we learn from this very deeply personal inner journey, as well as very challenging outward journey? How can we do that in our everyday life? And I think that often what happens is we have a bit of a reluctance to do that when it comes to our personal relationships, particularly our marital relationships. I think often what happens in our cultures is that we have a sort of prototype of what is expected of marriage, and we can't move left or right from that. There's this expectation. We go into it, we don't ask any questions, we don't think, we're not concerned about the couple themselves and their future. We're concerned about the here and now and the wedding ceremony more than we're concerned about anything else. So therefore what I just wanted to start off with is to connect it to the period of Hajj that we're in, to keep in mind constantly that that is something that we need to take with us in our personal relationships. So last night on the internet, on Facebook, I put out a message to my Facebook friends and said, okay, what do you see as the things that is most important in marriage? And what do you see as the thing that which is most challenging? And I have a list here. And I had quite a big response actually. Mainly women, there's 2 pages there. This is just in less than 12 hours. There was a massive response of people. So obviously people are really concerned about this issue. There are things that people want to talk about. And there's sort of generic things that people feel from their own experiences. The things I say: trust, respect, support, listening. And the challenging thing primarily that people are saying is communication. The biggest challenge across the board is for both sides to hear each other, to listen to each other, and to respect that difference, perhaps of perspective or way of getting something across. I have the list here if you want to have a look at it afterwards. You can see the things that people were saying. But I'm the sort of person who tends to start off with the bad news and then move towards looking at the good news. And I don't know if any of you have been to my previous talks, some of it might be familiar. There isn't too much research really done which is really useful on the family dynamics within Muslim communities, across the board in all countries. There's very little real hard evidence done. But there are some researches done and which show that there are a range of issues that are creating massive problems in Muslim families. I heard, coming here in Malaysia, that we have a very increasingly high divorce rate. About 30-40% of marriages are likely to end in divorce, which is very high. And this percentage is actually reflected in many other Muslim countries. The divorce rate, for example, in Britain amongst Muslims is increasing every day. We hear about these stories all the time. And therefore, one of the main reasons for this divorce, in a study done by Sound Vision a few years ago, and this is in a Muslim context, this is not a generic sort of thing. The number one issue is in-laws. The number two is...
what is number one?
In-laws. The second one is extramarital relationships. The third one is incompatibility. Fourth one is fairy tale expectations. Then there's abuse. And there can be a range of abuse, not just physical. It could be emotional abuse, psychological abuse, a range of different types of abuse. lack of preparation for marriage, right? Financial problems, and lying and hiding information. So these are things that people in the study are showing are problems, the main problems coming in Muslim families. And I did a little bit of research about issues in Malaysia, and I found it interesting academic research, which says, the title is Marital Breakdown in Muslim Community in Malaysia, done in 2014. And what it's saying is quite an interesting thing. It's saying, which I will touch at later, as a result of rapid socio-economic changes as well, besides creating what is called the conspiracy of nuclear family, this is in their opinion, family has lost its function and gradually become unstable, and thus more and more family life ended with divorce. Nowadays, problems of divorce and domestic conflict has become a national problem. Yaqub points out that urbanization leads to changes of family function. Many of the functions of urban families, such as economy, education, religion, caring and recreation, were taken over by other institutions, such as factories and industries, that also perform similar functions in certain extents. The transfer of these functions to other institutions has weakened family institutions as a result. There was a change in family roles and power. The family no longer had the ability to resolve any arising problems within among their members as well as surrounding community. So therefore, I think there are a lot of things to think about in that, as the massive shift in our socio-economic lives, which is also contributing to the problem. And another research, the impact of modernization of family institutions, what the suggestion is that there's a declining, the family institutions declining and losing its sacred role in spite of the material achievement. So therefore, while there's been this great financial achievement, the sacredness of family life has also been impacted by that. And again, in a Malaysian context, some of the key issues of marital breakdown, on the top of the list in this particular research done by Amina Abdul Rahman, is finance, parenting of adolescent children, changing values, work-life balance, and gender issues. So these are the sort of issues which are coming more locally in a Malaysian context. So what I want to then say is that there's no prototype of a type of marriage, in the sense that people have always got married. For example, there's some people who get married at a young age, some people get married at a later age. There are people who marry with cultural differences, and there's a whole range of different types of marriage. So it's, at one level we can say we can't make a rule. There's no rule, but we can say that we have some principles that we can work towards. But what we're finding within the sort of types of marriages people are engaging in, there are lots of problems within that too. There's a lack of choice of partners, and increasingly you'll find women who are finding it very difficult to find partners who are compatible to them in the kind of socio-economic changes that have happened in the last 50 years. So therefore, the role of women in society has changed, expectations have changed. So, but our cultural expectations have not changed. So while women have changed, our expectations of women are still 50 years back. They haven't adjusted the role of men and women together into the times that we're living. And you find that there are people who are either overqualified and underqualified. You can't find people who are educationally matched to each other. And then the other thing that becomes factors in marriage and sometimes make us make wrong choices, or maybe is biological factors, right? That you get to an age that maybe in your 20s you're thinking, no, I'm not in a hurry, I'm going to find the right person, and it has to be like, X, Y, and Z. And then you get to your late 20s, and this is for both men and women. Maybe for men it's a bit later, maybe 35 for men. But by the late 20s for women, they want to get married, and there's no guys around, and then because of the biological factors, maybe they just marry somebody spontaneously without really thinking if that's the right person for them. So these are things that are real issues that we shouldn't shy away from talking. We should be aware of it. And I think from a religious Islamic point of view, it's required for us to think about these things. And what I always like to give as an example is what Islam requires of us. Actually, and what we do culturally are two different things. Islam requires us to really focus on what values and principles, ethics we seek in a partner before marriage. Are you compatible? It's very preventative, the conditions that people look for in marriage. Are these people likely to be successful in their marriage? Are the factors around going to be good? Are they sharing their spiritual values? Are they sharing their ethical values? These are the things that we need to think about in marriage. The wedding ceremony itself is not that important religiously. It's simple, straightforward, Mukha, 3 days, full stop. And of course, we are required to enjoy weddings. One of those things we enjoy, so we shouldn't be dull about weddings. But the overemphasis on the wedding ceremony often takes away and creates problems in the marriage before it started. And then after people are married, often we forget about them. We forget, particularly if they're married young, maybe they need support, financial, emotional, other things, or other factors come along, and we are not so concerned about married couples after the wedding, which is completely the opposite from our religious point of view. When you go as witnesses to a wedding, we are there to say, we are there for you. We witnessed this wedding, and we are there for you, and if you need us, we are there to support you whichever way we want. It's a sort of relationship that you have of those people who are there and those people getting married. So this is something that I think we have a tendency to forget about, because we are a little bit more focused on the party favors, and the this, and the lovely cake, and so on. I'm not against any of this, but I'm saying is where we put the priority in the relationship. So I just want to, from my experiences over the years, in particularly working with a lot of marriage problems, is I think what often happens is that we confuse a lot of different things. And I think that for us as Muslims, as human beings, we have this innate relationship which we are not often actually really aware of, right? Because we are, and I divide this into 3 areas. We are spiritual, we're human, and we're social, right? From the spiritual point of view, all of us, regardless of our faith, regardless of where we come from, regardless of what people think about it, we are all created. And this is what we believe as Muslims. We're all created from the same source. We're all created of Allah. And so we all have this DNA that Allah, the Creator, has given to us. All of us. We all have this as part of His spiritual creation that's created. But then He's created us as human beings. So the human part of us, which is also universal, is more to do with our biology, right? So therefore we are men and women, and we have a biological aspect to us which differ. So therefore, biology doesn't make us less equal than each other. These are a harmonious relationship, because as somebody, as one of my teachers said to me when I asked him, why is it that sex is such a complex, difficult thing that creates so many problems, right? And he said to me, well, it is the medium through which Allah gives us a taste of His power of creation, because through the sexual act, life is born, and a new life and creation. So we experience Allah through this act. That's why the sacredness of the marital relationship in that sense, and how we need to see that relationship in that way, right? It's not one being superior to the other. It's a harmonious relationship between the two. And then we have our roles, the social side of it. And this is where most of the problems are, right? And I would say of the 3, it's the social, which is the transferable. It is not set in stone, and it changes over time and generations and experiences. So, for example, the way we live our life now in these very urbanized post-industrial cities. And for us from London and you in Malaysia here, we're very similar from this. This requires of us a different approach to how do we safeguard family life. Because as I quoted earlier from the Malaysian study, is that people are questioning that this fast movement into modernity has taken away the protective layers of marital and family life that we were used to before. That the mother, for example, is not the sole carer of the children, that the children would be safely playing around the street with lots of mothers and lots of fathers, right? And the dependency on the young couple, let's say, to be everything to their children was not the same in past generations, and it wasn't in my generation, right? But nowadays we are, let's say, parent-centric in our family life. Two parents, the mother and father, are expected to do absolutely everything. And it's very difficult, and it's not easy to do that. And we haven't compensated for this change in our social structures for the times that we live. And for me, this is the real critical issue that we have to look at. I mean, I can't give solutions for Malaysia. It's something that Malaysia has to work out for itself. What in your context is how you need to do that. But I would personally say, this is a crisis, and we need to do it yesterday, right? And I'd also like to suggest that we have a macro-micro problem happening. We are all of us concerned about the destruction, total destruction happening in the Muslim world all over the place. I don't think there's any place that is not impacted by devastation, right? So we can sit and we can give aid, or we can be angry and devastated by this all. But maybe Allah is giving us a lesson. We didn't care enough for our cultures and our society, so therefore it's crumbling around us. So the question we must ask ourselves for our crumbling world that we live in, how do we stop the crumbling and how do we safeguard it in the future? So these are massive questions we must ask ourselves today. How do we stop this? And we, both men and women, have a role in this. And within this, we have to recognize that we are living a sort of a triple experience. The religious, often what happens is that suddenly we turn to religion more as a sort of crisis point, and religion becomes something that stops us from hemorrhaging, whether internally as a person or as a society. And therefore we sort of fossilize religion to be very static as rituals, because we are protecting our integrity, we're protecting ourselves from all this complexity around that. But we need to make religion take it from the external ritual to this inner journey, to this inner change, going back to the connection with Hajj, to say that Hajj is both a very deeply inner, challenging journey as well as an outward journey. So we take this into our lives and we make our spirituality a harmonious relationship between the inner and the outer. And I think that, so we're dealing with the religious, we're dealing with our cultural values. And this is where I'm going back to our social roles. Some of our cultural values can be changed. They're not sacrosanct, right? Where they complement religious values and ethics, that's good, but not all of them do. And there's a lot of injustice evolving into this. I give an example of the sort of controversial issue is that it's happening all over the world, is polygamy, the abuse of polygamy, right? And I want to get into a big long discussion about the rights and wrongs and the Quranic perspective of it, but let's put it down to say if polygamy is going to be practiced, there are certain ethics that's involved with it. And often these are done without those ethics. So therefore, if we just give that as an example, right, if we are condoning the bad practice of polygamy, and we are not aware of the consequences of married life and of the life of children and communities, then we are allowing an injustice to continue. So I think that we have to look at some of these issues like polygamy, like domestic violence, for example. If we don't stand up against domestic violence, then we are enabling an injustice to happen. And therefore we're creating the seeds for our, let's say, our destruction of family life. And because we've kept quiet too long, what's happening is we have radical feminists, secularists, all sorts of other people who feel that they take our voices, because actually many of them are saying the right thing, but maybe not in the way that makes sense to a lot of us. So we need to be in the forefront of this. And also we live a secular life. So these things impact us in our married life. We have to make decisions according to these three things constantly, right? So I don't want to really say too much more, and I'd like to give it to Fuad. I just wanted to say that there are these massive challenges that we need to take. And I think if I just draw from 28 years of marriage, I would say that one of the things that for Fuad and I think, we met through our Islamic activity. And in those days, 28 years ago, nobody thought, these things that I'm thinking about now, I never thought about in those days. We only were beginning to think about some of these things. Alhamdulillah, we didn't theorize too much. And in those days, people got married really quick. Nowadays, people say, no, we've got to wait, we've got to get to know each other, 2 years, this, that, and the other. But in those days, somebody liked each other, yeah, it's okay, 6 weeks you're married, right? That's what used to happen much more in the past, right? So we didn't theorize about it, but if I think about it, in a sense, it was a risk. It's a risk because we met each other a few times, we know each other, there's something, I'll give you a secret, that one of the things for me, for as a Muslim man, is that he had a sense of humor. And particularly in religious circles, it's very difficult to find men with a sense of humor. Right? Sorry to say that. Right? Who know how to be social, who don't feel constrained by social environments, and they don't look at you as a woman and think that you can't engage in that social environment. So Fuad was quite comfortable in that, so she had a sense of humor. But now, after 20 years, that time, I would say, I'm quite happy for him to have brain surgery where that bit about humour can be tweaked and reduced a little bit. No, but so alhamdulillah. So that was the thing for me, which is the thing that's the critical thing. And it was our work. It was our work, shared commitment to working in the community that we were involved in. But I would say that when you're passionate, the two couple, about something, you sometimes forget yourself in that situation, particularly with Islamic work, because it's all-consuming. So there were things I would say that we didn't invest in properly. I remember this same teacher I mentioned earlier, he said, the two of you, you're doing too much out there, and you have to invest more in your personal life together. And we were young, and you think, oh yeah, no, we are okay, we'll manage, and all that kind of stuff. But he was right. And the thing is, what I would say to young people getting married, whether it's your work that keeps you busy because you're both working, or whether you have a passion for something, or whatever it is, or even if family pressure keeps you really busy, make sure you invest in your time together. Get to know each other, because even if you went out with each other for 10 years, that is not the same as being married. And one of the things about marriage is that what I found often when you're counselling people is there's an understanding that doesn't need to be said often in marriage, that when you're married, it's a shared relationship of this social environment. But sadly, we do have to say it because people don't get it. People don't get that when you get married, it's about love, it's about going out and being, carefree and enjoying each other's company, but it's also about taking the washing, putting it on the line, it's about the food being cooked, it's about all those kind of things. So this is where then the problems start, because people don't see marriage as practical, because it's also practical, right? And if you can do those things with love, cooking and taking the rubbish out or something like that, that's obviously the best kind of a relationship, that you see this as an integrated thing and it's something that you do together. So what I want to just end with, and there's other things I would like to say, but I leave that, is that, no, what I will just do say is that there's a book written by somebody called Gary Chapman, who says the 5 languages of love, right? So you said the first is the word of affirmation. And I think that's really important, to say things that are kind to each other, value each other, remind each other, that's what I really like about you, that's what I really love about you, right? And that's the first language of love that he identifies. This is a psychiatrist. He says quality time, enjoy your companionship with each other, giving gifts, right? Tokens of love, acts of service, khidmah, right? And physical touch. Of course, in marriage, that's what it's all about. So therefore, what I sort of have done in past times is said, what does that really mean for us? Can we put this in an Islamic language, right? So really what it's saying, it's about attention, affection, and appreciation. And if we look at the prophetic example, we know, it's funny that these sunnahs are often not taught, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, the good husband is the one, when she speaks, he listens. When she complains, he is concerned. I mean, mashallah, what can you say? That is so profound. No Western psychologist can cover on that. That's such a profound thing. And he also said, never let a day pass without showing affection. Another, mashallah, wonderful sunnah. Sayyidina Aisha, his Mukha, said that the Prophet ﷺ would use code language with each other. They would use code language with each other, denoting their love. She asked the Prophet how he would describe his love for her. And he said, like a strong binding knot, the more you tug, the stronger it gets. In other words, that's what he said. So therefore, we have this beautiful example of some of the things that psychologists make millions of pounds in writing books about, but we have this example from our own tradition, from the Sunnah of the Prophet, of where what he, as a man, why do I love him as a woman? What do I see in him? I see that compassion. I see as a woman, I feel validated. I feel he gets me, right? And what I feel is important for me. So therefore, if men understand that element of the Sunnah, I'm only talking from a woman's point of view, is then I don't think women would really complain, in that respect, about appreciating their husbands a little bit more. Okay, thank you very much. I'll just end with that. I'll give it to Fuad.
I think I'm going to close the session for tonight. If anyone has any more questions, you can approach the speakers privately after this. So everyone, please do stay on if you want to catch the speakers. Drive safe, and we shall close with Surah An-Nas and the expiation of the end of the gathering. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Subhanallah Allahumma wa bihamdik. Asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.